Millionaire noticed the waitress was very sad at work and then followed her. What he ended up discovering left him in tears immediately. The sun was setting over the coastal city of San Diego, painting the sky with orange hues that reflected in the mirrored windows of Ocean Crest Restaurant. Michael Davidson adjusted his Italian tie and observed the movement of the establishment while savoring a sip of the red wine he had ordered. His attentive eyes, accustomed to evaluating details of million-dollar ventures, fixed on something unusual in that sophisticated environment. Among the elegantly decorated tables, a middle-aged waitress moved with a particular grace. Her gestures were precise and delicate, as if each movement was part of a long-rehearsed choreography. What caught Michael's attention, however, wasn't her efficiency, but the contrast between the polite smile she offered to customers and a deep melancholy that inhabited her brown eyes. Michael was accustomed to reading people. It was a skill that had taken him to the top of the real estate market. However, there was something different about this woman. While other employees moved with the characteristic rush of a busy restaurant, she maintained an almost musical serenity in her gestures. At the end of the meal, he left a generous tip, enough to cover a month's rent in a modest neighborhood of the city. The waitress, unlike other employees who usually showed enthusiasm with his gratuities, merely thanked him with a discreet nod. That reaction, or rather the lack of it, intrigued the businessman even more. He checked his wristwatch. He still had 2 hours before his next meeting. In an impulse that even he didn't understand, he decided to wait outside the restaurant. For the first time in years, Michael Davidson, the man who planned every minute of his day, was acting on pure intuition. When the waitress left through the back door, it was already night. She wore a simple coat and carried a worn bag on her shoulder. Her steps were hurried, as if every second was precious. Michael followed her discreetly, maintaining a respectful distance. The path led them through increasingly less busy streets until they reached a specialized medical clinic. The sign at the entrance indicated Neuromuscular Treatment Center. The waitress quickly entered, and Michael waited across the street, observing through the illuminated windows. 20 minutes later, she left the location visibly shaken. Her hands trembled as she tucked an envelope in her bag, the same envelope where Michael had seen her put the tip he had left. His heart tightened when he realized that all that money had probably just been handed over to the clinic. The next day, contrary to all his habits, Michael returned to Ocean Crest. He purposely chose a table in the area served by her. Up close, he could read the name on her badge, Helen. He observed how she moved between the tables with the same elegance as the day before, but now he noticed other details. The disguised fatigue in the corners of her eyes, her hands slightly marked by work, the simple golden wedding band she still wore on her left hand. During lunch, Michael heard when another waiter called her to resolve a situation in the kitchen. "Helen, do you need to go now? Weren't you supposed to be leaving for your other job?" Her response was just a resigned smile as she headed to the kitchen. Another job. The information echoed in the businessman's mind. In the following weeks, Michael established a routine that would surprise anyone who knew him. He regularly had lunch at Ocean Crest, always choosing tables served by Helen. Gradually, he began to weave small conversations, comments about the weather, discreet compliments about the service. It was as if he was learning a new language, the language of simplicity and genuine kindness. One afternoon, as Helen served his coffee, Michael noticed a small detail that had escaped his previous observations. On her wrist, partially covered by the sleeve of her uniform, was a delicate treble clef tattoo. That small musical symbol seemed out of place on a luxury restaurant waitress, as if it was a clue to a much bigger story that was yet to be discovered. The discovery of the musical tattoo on Helen's wrist awakened even more curiosity in Michael. During his regular visits to the restaurant, he began to pay attention to other details that might reveal more about that mysterious woman. Her long, well-cared-for fingers, despite the manual work, moved with a precision that reminded him of a musician's. On a particularly quiet afternoon at the restaurant, Michael arrived earlier than usual and found Helen arranging the tables for the lunch hour. From one of the reserved rooms came soft piano music. He observed when she paused for a moment, closed her eyes, and her fingers began to move gently in the air as if playing an invisible piano. Chopin's Nocturne. In E-flat major, said Michael, approaching. Helen opened her eyes, startled, and her cheeks blushed slightly. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I also like classical music. You know Chopin? Helen asked, and for the first time Michael saw a genuine sparkle in her eyes. My mother was a piano teacher, he replied, sitting at his usual table, but I confess I never had her talent. And you seem to know the piece well. Helen hesitated for a moment, as if weighing each word before answering. It was in a different time, she finally said, returning to arranging the cutlery with military precision. Michael realized he had touched on a delicate subject and didn't insist. But that brief exchange revealed a new dimension of Helen. There was an artist hidden behind the waitress uniform. In the following weeks, Michael began to frequent the restaurant at night as well, after his business meetings. It was on one of these nights that he witnessed something that deeply disturbed him. Helen was receiving a call on her cell phone during her break, and even from afar, it was possible to see her face transform into pure anguish. No, Mary, please, don't give up now, Michael heard her say, her voice choked. I know it's hard. My daughter, but we'll manage. Mom will find a way, I promise. That night after her shift, Helen didn't follow her usual path to the clinic. Instead, she headed to a small bar downtown where a sign at the entrance announced, Piano Bar Live Music. Michael followed her, intrigued by that deviation in her routine. To his surprise, Helen didn't enter through the customer's door, but through the back. 15 minutes later, she emerged wearing a simple but elegant dress, very different from her restaurant uniform. She sat at the piano and, without any announcement or introduction, began to play. The transformation was extraordinary. Her fingers danced over the keys with an intimacy that only years of dedication could create. The music that flowed was both technically impeccable and deeply emotional. The few customers in the bar stopped their conversations, captured by the melody that filled the environment. Michael remained in a discreet corner, observing that metamorphosis. Helen wasn't just good, she was exceptional. The mystery only increased. How did someone with such talent end up working as a waitress in 3 different jobs? The answer began to reveal itself when, during a break between songs, he heard a conversation between Helen and the bar owner. Thank you for letting me play today, Carl, she said. The money will help a lot with Mary's new treatment. You know you can come play whenever you want, Helen, the man replied kindly. I still don't understand why you don't accept a fixed job here. It would pay better than the restaurant. The restaurant has health insurance, she explained simply, and I need the flexibility of the other jobs to accompany Mary to her therapies. Michael felt his heart tighten. Each new discovery about Helen revealed a story of sacrifice and dedication that went far beyond what he could imagine. And for the first time in years, the successful businessman, accustomed to seeing the world in terms of profits and losses, felt small in the face of the greatness of that woman who had set aside her dreams to care for her daughter. The discovery of Helen's musical talent awakened long-stored memories in Michael. In his office on the top floor of one of the city's most luxurious buildings, he spent the entire morning distracted, his eyes lost in the view of the sea, while his fingers unconsciously drummed to the rhythm of Chopin's Nocturne he had heard. Helen play. Mr. Davidson? His secretary's voice brought him back to reality. You have a meeting with the investors in 5 minutes. Michael adjusted himself in his Italian leather chair and tried to focus on the documents in front of him, but his mind kept returning to the piano bar. There was something in Helen's music that touched him deeply, as if each note carried a story of overcoming that he needed to discover. During the meeting with the investors, while discussing the construction of a new hotel complex, an idea began to form in his mind. The project included a luxury restaurant on the top floor, with a view of the sea. The investors were talking about hiring a renowned pianist for jazz nights when Michael interrupted them. I know someone perfect for that position, he said, surprising everyone with his sudden interest in something he would normally delegate. To the events team. That same night, Michael returned to Ocean Crest. Helen was serving tables with her usual discreet elegance, but he noticed that her hands trembled slightly as she served the dishes. The fatigue on her face was more evident than usual. "Helen," he called when she approached his table. "Forgive my intrusion, but I heard you play last night at the piano. Bar." Her face paled slightly. "Mr. Davidson, Please don't worry," he gently interrupted her. "Actually, I have a proposal for you. I'm developing a new project, and we need a pianist for Friday and Saturday nights. The payment would be 3 times what you earn here, with all benefits maintained." Helen was silent for a long moment, her eyes revealing an internal battle. "It's very kind of you, but I can't accept. My schedules are complicated. I have commitments that I can't postpone, and..." "The schedules would be flexible," Michael assured. "And the health insurance is the best in the category, covering even specialized treatments." Upon mentioning specialized treatments, he noticed that Helen's eyes filled with contained tears. She murmured an apology and quickly walked away toward the kitchen. Michael leaned back in his chair, watching her disappear through the service door. He had touched on a sensitive point, and now he felt guilty for having been so direct. But his intuition told him that this proposal could be exactly what Helen needed. On his way out of the restaurant, he left an envelope with his secretary, asking her to deliver it to Helen at the end of her shift. Inside, in addition to the details of the formal job offer, there was a card with his personal number and a handwritten note. Music has the power to heal not only those who listen, but especially those who play. What Michael didn't expect was the reaction that gesture would provoke. The next morning, while participating in a video conference in his office, his secretary interrupted him with a concerned look. "Mr. Davidson, excuse the interruption, but there's a lady at the reception insisting on speaking with you. She said her name is Helen and it's about the job offer." Michael immediately ended the meeting. When Helen entered his office, he noticed that she had been crying. In her hands, crumpled, was the envelope he had left at the restaurant. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. "Why are you following me, observing my life? What do you really want from me?" The question caught Michael by surprise. In all his years in the business world, he was accustomed to people trying to guess his real intentions, looking for second and third intentions in every gesture. But the raw sincerity in Helen's voice completely disarmed him. "I don't know," he replied, with an honesty that surprised them both. "Maybe because for the first time in a long time, I found someone who reminded me that there's more to life than financial statements and contracts." Helen sat heavily in one of the chairs, as if her legs could no longer support her. "You don't understand," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I can't simply accept your help. There's much more at stake than you imagine." "Then help me understand," replied Michael, sitting in the chair next to her, abandoning his usual executive posture. "Why does a pianist of your talent work in 3 different jobs? Why does every penny you earn go to that clinic? Who is Mary?" The silence that followed Michael's questions weighed like lead in the office. Helen looked out the panoramic window, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea met the sky. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of years of silent struggles. "Mary is my daughter," she began, her fingers unconsciously caressing the treble clef tattoo on her wrist. "She's 16 years old, and since she was 12 has been fighting a rare neuromuscular condition that affects her movements. The doctors say it's progressive, but there are treatments that can help. The problem is that they're very expensive, and not all are covered by health insurance." Michael listened attentively, his heart tightening with each word. Helen continued, as if a dam had finally broken. "Before all this, I was a piano teacher at the conservatory. Mary also loved music, had a natural talent. But when the first symptoms appeared, Robert, my husband, couldn't handle the pressure. He simply left one morning, leaving only a note saying he wasn't prepared for a life of hospitals." Her hands trembled slightly as she told the story, but her voice remained firm. "I sold the piano first, then the house. We moved to a smaller apartment and I started working anywhere that would accept me. The restaurant offered health insurance, which is why I clung to it like a lifeline." Michael stood up and walked to his mini fridge, getting a bottle of water for Helen. As he served her, he noticed a photo in the wallet she had left open on the table. A smiling teenager sitting at the piano, her fingers positioned on the keys with the same elegance he recognized in Helen. Mary before the illness, explained Helen, noticing his gaze. She still smiles like that, you know. Even on bad days, even when her body doesn't obey, she maintains that smile. It's she who gives me strength to continue. And the piano bar? Michael asked softly. Carl was a friend of my father's. When he found out about our situation, he offered for me to play some nights. The extra money helps with medications that the plan doesn't cover. Helen paused, taking a deep breath. But I can't accept your proposal, Mr. Davidson. I don't want your charity. Michael approached the window, observing the movement of the city below. It's not charity, Helen, it's a business opportunity. The hotel needs an exceptional pianist, and you need a job that pays better and offers more benefits. It's a fair exchange. Why do you care? The question came out almost as a whisper. Michael turned to face her, and for the first time in years, allowed himself to be completely honest with someone. Because I also know what it's like to lose everything. That matters. My ex-wife took our daughter Amanda away 15 years ago. I was too busy building this empire to notice that my family was crumbling. When I realized I was alone in a luxury penthouse with all the possessions in the world and no reason to smile. Helen observed him with a new look, as if for the first time seeing beyond the facade of the successful businessman. Michael continued, "When I saw you playing at the piano bar, I realized there was more music in those 2 hours than in all my years of business success." A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. Michael's secretary entered discreetly. "Excuse me, Mr. Davidson, but Dr. Bennett from the neurological clinic is on the line. She said it's about the new treatment protocol." Helen rose abruptly, collecting her bag. "I need to go. Mary has physical therapy in an hour and—" "Helen," Michael called her before she reached the door, "the offer still stands. No pressure, no conditions, just an opportunity to do what you love and still help your daughter." She paused for a moment, her hand on the doorknob. "I'll think about it," she finally said, and left behind only the echo of her steps and a light jasmine perfume in the air. 2 weeks passed since the conversation in Michael's office. Helen hadn't given an answer about the hotel proposal, but something subtle had changed in their interactions at the restaurant. The invisible wall she maintained between herself and customers seemed to have diminished, at least with Michael. On a particularly busy Thursday, he noticed that she was limping slightly as she served the tables. Her eyes were more tired than usual, and there was a tension in her shoulders that he had never noticed before. "Is everything okay?" he asked when she approached to serve his coffee. Helen hesitated for a moment before answering. "Mary had a difficult night. The muscle spasms were stronger and I had to take her to the emergency room." She paused, nervously adjusting the napkin on the table. "The new treatment that Dr. Bennett suggested is promising, but the health insurance doesn't cover it." Michael felt his heart tighten. "And how much does it cost?" "More than I can dream of paying," she replied with a sad smile. "But we'll find a way. We always do." That night after work, Michael did something he hadn't done in years. He drove to the neighborhood where his ex-wife and his daughter Amanda lived. He parked the car across the street, observing the lights on in the family house. Through the window, he could see a young woman on the phone gesturing animatedly. Amanda had grown so much. Did she still play piano as her mother had taught her? His cell phone vibrated with a message from his secretary. "Dr. Bennett confirmed the ECU meeting for tomorrow, 9 a.m. Michael smiled. Perhaps there was a way to help that Helen couldn't refuse. The next morning, Dr. Bennett's office proved to be a welcoming environment, quite different from the cold hospitals Michael used to visit. On the walls, photos of smiling patients told stories of overcoming. "Mr. Davidson," the doctor greeted him with a firm handshake. "I confess I was surprised by your contact. What can I do for you?" "I want to know about the experimental treatment for neuromuscular conditions that you're developing," he replied, getting straight to the point. "Specifically, I want to know why it's not covered by health insurance." The doctor adjusted her glasses, studying him with interest. "It's a new protocol still in the testing phase. It combines intensive physical therapy with neuromuscular stimulation and a new medication. The results are promising, but the cost..." "And If I said I can help with that, Michael interrupted, taking a folder from his briefcase. I have a proposal for you. For almost 2 hours, they discussed numbers, protocols, and possibilities. When Michael finally left the office, he had a discreet smile on his lips. His secretary was waiting for him with a folder of documents. Everything is prepared, as you requested, she said, handing him the papers. The New Horizons Foundation was registered yesterday. All documents are in order. Michael leafed through the papers with satisfaction. The non-profit foundation he had created would be the perfect instrument to finance Mary's treatment and that of other patients in the same situation, without Helen being able to refuse out of pride. At the end of that afternoon, he decided to stop by the piano bar where Helen used to play. To his surprise, he found the place closed, with a sign on the door. Closed for renovation. Carl, the owner, was on the sidewalk talking to some employees. Good afternoon, Michael approached. Are you Carl? I'm an admirer of Helen's work. The older man studied him for a moment before responding. Ah, so you're the famous Mr. Davidson? Helen mentioned that you had seen her play here. He paused, looking at the closed bar. Too bad she won't be able to anymore. The building was sold. They're going to build a shopping center. Michael felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Sold? To whom? Stella Enterprises Group, replied Carl with a sigh. You know them? Michael knew them very well. It was one of the subsidiary companies of his own business group. The shopping center project had passed across his desk months ago, but he had never made the connection with Helen's piano bar. At that moment, standing on the sidewalk as the sun set over the city, Michael Davidson realized he was at a crossroads. His business decisions, which had always seemed so distant and impersonal, were now directly affecting the lives of people he was beginning to care about. And for the first time in his career, profit didn't seem to be the most important factor to consider. The discovery that his own company was responsible for closing the piano bar haunted Michael all night. In his penthouse apartment, he spent hours reviewing the documents for the shopping center project, looking for an alternative that wouldn't destroy that space that meant so much to Helen and the local community. The next morning, an unexpected call surprised him. It was Helen. Mr. Davidson, her voice sounded different on the phone, more vulnerable. About your proposal for the hotel. Is it still open? Michael sat more upright in his chair. Of course it is. What made you change your mind? There was a pause on the other end of the line. The piano bar is going to close. It was my only connection to music, besides being an important source of extra income for Mary's treatment. And yesterday, she hesitated. Yesterday, Mary asked me to play for her. For the first time since she got sick, she wanted to hear me play. The emotion in Helen's voice was palpable. Michael could imagine the tears she was trying to contain. But we don't have a piano anymore, she continued. We sold ours years ago, and now without the piano bar. Her voice failed. When can you start? Michael asked softly. As soon as possible. But I need to keep my other jobs until I'm sure that. Helen, Michael gently interrupted her. The hotel salary is more than enough to cover your 3 current jobs, and the health insurance is much more comprehensive. You won't need to divide yourself anymore. The silence on the other end of the line was eloquent. Finally, Helen responded, I can start next week. After hanging up, Michael immediately called his secretary. Cancel all my appointments this afternoon and call Richard from the legal department. We need to review a project. In the following hours, Michael worked tirelessly on a new proposal for the piano bar land. Instead of a shopping center, the space would be transformed into a cultural center, keeping the original bar as part of a larger complex that would include rooms for music lessons and a small auditorium. While working on the details of the project, his mind wandered to Amanda, his daughter. How many times had she asked him to listen to her play piano, and how many times had he said he was too busy? The music that Helen played at the piano bar had awakened memories he had tried to bury for years. At the end of the afternoon, when the sun was already setting over the city, Michael received another unexpected call. It was his ex-wife, Beatrice. Michael, her voice sounded concerned. Amanda has been different in the last few weeks. I discovered that she's been visiting a physical therapy clinic downtown. Do you know anything about this? Michael's heart raced. The clinic where Mary was being treated? Could it be possible that? No, he replied, his mind working quickly. But I'll find out. After hanging up, Michael remained for a long time looking out his office window. Fate seemed to be weaving an intricate web, connecting lives that seemed so distant. His daughter, who hadn't spoken to him in years, had somehow found her way to the same clinic where Helen's daughter was being treated. That night, while driving home, Michael stopped at Ocean Crest. Helen was on her last day of work at the restaurant. When she saw him enter, she smiled. A different smile, lighter, as if part of the weight she carried had been lifted. "Mr. Davidson," she approached with a cup of coffee. "I didn't expect to see you today." "Michael," he gently corrected. "I think after everything we can use our first names." He paused, gathering courage for the question that wouldn't leave his mind. "Helen, your daughter, does she receive treatment at New Hope Clinic?" Helen's face lit up. "Yes, actually, something amazing happened today. Mary made a new friend there, a young woman who's doing preventive physical therapy. They spent the whole afternoon talking about music. Her name is Amanda." The revelation that Amanda and Mary had become friends left Michael in a state of shock. For years he had tried to reconnect with his daughter through expensive gifts and occasional messages, without success. Now fate was creating an unexpected bond through music and Helen's daughter. On Helen's first night as the hotel's pianist, Michael arrived early to welcome her. The black grand piano gleamed under the soft lights of the panoramic restaurant. The glass walls offered a stunning view of the city and the sea in the background. "It's beautiful," said Helen, gently passing her fingers over the keys. Her eyes sparkled with contained emotion. "I tried it personally," replied Michael. "I wanted to make sure it was perfectly tuned for tonight." Helen looked at him surprised. "You play?" "Not for a long time," he admitted. "My mother insisted. I learn as a child, but I abandoned the lessons as soon as I could. One of the biggest regrets of my life was not encouraging Amanda to continue with music when she showed interest." The restaurant began to fill, and Helen started her performance. The music flowed like water, filling the environment with an elegance that seemed to be part of the night view of the city itself. Customers occasionally paused their conversations to appreciate, and some even applauded between songs. During her break, Helen approached the table where Michael was working on his laptop. "Can I tell you something?" she asked, sitting down. "Of course," he replied, closing the computer. "Mary called me earlier. She and Amanda spent the afternoon together at the clinic again. Apparently, your daughter is helping Mary with motor coordination exercises through the digital piano in the occupational therapy room." Michael felt his throat tighten. "Digital piano?" Helen smiled. "Yes. Amanda discovered that Mary used to play and suggested using the piano as part of the therapy. The physical therapist approved the idea, said it could help with fine motor coordination." At that moment, Helen's cell phone rang. She looked at the display and her face changed. "It's the clinic," she said, quickly rising to answer. Michael observed as she walked to a more reserved area. Her body language gradually changed. Tense shoulders, free hand squeezing the railing of the veranda. When she returned, her eyes were tearful, but there was a smile on her lips. "Dr. Bennett," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "She said that a foundation contacted the clinic. They want to finance a pilot program of music therapy for patients with neuromuscular conditions. Mary was selected to be one of the first participants." Michael maintained his neutral expression, although his heart beat faster. "That's wonderful, Helen." "Yes, but..." she hesitated. "The most incredible thing is that the program includes a digital piano for each participant to use at home. I can't believe it. Mary will be able to play again." She discreetly wiped away a tear. "You know what's most curious? The name of the foundation is New Horizons. It seems the universe is conspiring to bring music back into our lives." Michael smiled softly, keeping to himself the secret of the foundation he had created. What mattered wasn't the money he had invested, but the light he saw in Helen's eyes. "Sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways," he commented. "Yes," Helen agreed, returning to the piano. Her fingers slid over the keys, beginning the First notes of Chopin's Nocturne, the same music that had caught Michael's attention at the beginning of it all. From across the room, a familiar figure entered the restaurant. Michael felt his heart stop for a moment as he recognized his ex-wife Beatrice. She wasn't alone. Amanda accompanied her, her eyes immediately drawn to the music that filled the room. Michael remained motionless at his table, watching as his daughter approached the piano, hypnotized by Helen's performance. When the music ended, Amanda was the first to applaud, her eyes shining with an emotion Michael hadn't seen in years. "You're Mary's mom," Amanda exclaimed, recognizing Helen. "She told me you were a pianist, but I never imagined. That was incredible." Helen smiled, surprised. "And you must be Amanda. Mary talks a lot about you." It was at that moment that Amanda noticed her father's presence. Their gazes met across the room, years of distance and unspoken words hanging between them like an invisible curtain that, for the first time, seemed possible to cross. The unexpected meeting at the hotel restaurant triggered a series of changes in the lives of everyone involved. Amanda, after years avoiding any contact with her father, began to appear regularly to hear Helen play. Sometimes she brought Mary with her, and the two young women would sit near the piano, sharing smiles and whispers while the music filled the room. On one of these nights, while Helen was taking her break, Amanda approached Michael's table. His heart accelerated as he saw his daughter walking voluntarily toward him for the first time in years. "Hi, Dad," she said, sitting down. Her voice carried a mixture of nervousness and determination. "I think we need to talk." Michael closed his laptop, giving his daughter his full attention. "Of course, honey. What do you want to talk about?" "About music," she replied, surprising him. "About why I stopped playing piano after you and Mum separated. About why I started doing preventive physical therapy at the same clinic as Mary." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I have carpal tunnel syndrome. It started a few months ago, probably from excessive computer use in architecture school. But when the physical therapist suggested exercises with a digital piano as part of the treatment, something awakened in me." Michael listened attentively, his heart tight. Amanda continued, "I met Mary by chance. She was frustrated with her exercises, and I offered to help. When we discovered that we both had a history with piano, it was as if we had known each other for years." "Why didn't you tell me about the carpal tunnel?" Michael asked softly. Amanda gave a sad smile. "For the same reason I stopped playing piano, because you were always too busy with your business to notice anything about my life." The words hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. "Amanda, No, Dad," she gently interrupted him. "I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it because, seeing you with Helen and Mary, I realize that people can change. And maybe it's not too late for us either." From across the room, Helen was returning to the piano. Mary, who was sitting near the instrument, smiled as she accompanied her mother with small finger movements as if playing an invisible piano. "You know what's amazing?" Amanda continued, her eyes fixed on Mary. "She told me she dreams of being an architect. She wants to design accessible spaces for people with mobility difficulties, and even with all the challenges she faces, she never stops smiling, dreaming." Michael observed as silent tears ran down his daughter's face. "She made me realize how much time I wasted holding on to resentment. Life is so fragile, so precious." At that moment, Helen began to play a melody that made both of them freeze. It was the music that Amanda used to practice as a child, her favorite in piano lessons. "How did she know?" Amanda whispered, emotional. "Mary must have told her," Michael replied, equally touched. "They talk a lot about music during the physical therapy sessions." Amanda wiped away the tears and smiled. "Dad, I'm thinking of playing again. Actually, I've already started practicing a little on the digital piano at the clinic, and I was wondering, could we maybe play together someday, like we used to when I was little?" Michael felt his own face wet. "Nothing would make me happier. Daughter?" The moment was interrupted by a commotion near the piano. Mary, who was trying to get up from her chair, staggered slightly. Helen immediately stopped playing, but before she could stand up, Amanda was already there, helping her friend. "Balance? It's okay, Mary smiled, holding Amanda's arm. I just sat too long, but I don't want to leave yet. Mum, can you play one more song? The one you and Amanda were practicing at the clinic yesterday? Michael observed as the three adjusted again around the piano, Helen in the center, the two young women on each side. The music that began to flow was soft, like a conversation between old friends who meet again after a long separation. The success of the music therapy program exceeded all expectations. In just a few weeks, the patients showed significant improvements, not only in motor coordination, but also in the emotional aspect. Dr. Bennett was especially impressed with Mary's progress, who could now play small melodies on the digital piano installed in her apartment. Helen watched in wonder as her daughter practiced daily, her fingers moving with increasing confidence over the keys. Amanda had become a constant presence in their lives, visiting Mary almost every day after her own physical therapy sessions. On a particularly special afternoon, Helen arrived home and found the two young women laughing as they tried to play a duet. "Mom!" Mary exclaimed excitedly. "Amanda is teaching me the simpler part of Sonata au clair de lune. Come see." Helen put the groceries on the table and approached the digital piano. Mary began to play, her fingers still a bit hesitant, but finding the notes with determination. Amanda accompanied her in the main melody, her hands moving with the grace that came from renewed practice. "Impressive," said Helen, emotional. "You two make quite a pair." "Actually," Amanda began, exchanging a complicit look with Mary, "we're planning a surprise for next month's benefit recital." "Benefit recital?" Helen asked, confused. "The New Horizons Foundation is organizing an event to raise funds and expand the music therapy program," explained Mary. "Dr. Bennett invited all the patients to participate, and guess what? Amanda's Dad offered the hotel's event hall." Helen felt her heart accelerate. In the last few weeks, her relationship with Michael had transformed into something she didn't quite know how to define. They weren't just employer and employee, nor just friends. There was something more, something neither dared to name. "Speaking of Dad," Amanda continued, "he's been appearing at the clinic a lot lately. Just yesterday he was there, talking for hours with Dr. Bennett about expanding the program to other treatment centers." Helen smiled, thinking about how Michael had changed since she had met him at Ocean Crest. The cold, calculating businessman had given way to a man who genuinely cared about the people around him. The sound of the intercom interrupted her thoughts. Mary went to answer, moving with more ease than a few weeks ago. "Mom," she called excitedly, "it's Mr. Carl from the piano bar. He wants to talk to you." Helen frowned, surprised. She hadn't spoken with Carl since the bar closed. She went down to the lobby where her old friend was waiting with a mysterious smile. "Helen, my dear," he hugged her warmly, "I need you to come with me. There's something you need to see." "Now." But Carl. "Trust me," he insisted, his eyes shining. "It's important." Helen hesitated for a moment, then went back to the apartment to let the girls know. Amanda immediately offered to stay with Mary. "Go ahead," assured the young woman. "We still have a lot to practice for the recital." Carl led Helen through the familiar downtown streets until they reached the old piano bar. Her heart tightened at seeing the place that held so many memories, but something was different. The windows, previously covered with boards, were now clean and illuminated. "What's happening?" she asked, confused. Carl smiled, opening the main door. "See for yourself." Helen entered and stood paralyzed. The environment was completely transformed. The walls had been painted in soft tones. The shining, restored wooden floor gleamed under the new lighting. In the center of the room, where her old piano used to be, there was now a gleaming black grand piano. "But how?" she stammered, walking to the instrument as if in a trance. "The shopping center project was cancelled," explained Carl, following her. "Instead, this place will become a cultural center. The piano bar will be maintained, but now we'll also have rooms for music lessons and a small auditorium." Helen gently passed her fingers over the piano keys, silent tears running down her face. "And the best part," continued Carl, "they want you to be the musical director of the center. Classes during the day, performances at night. What do you say?" But who? She began to ask, though she already suspected the answer. The New Horizons Foundation, replied Carl, smiling. Apparently they believe that music can heal more than just the body. Helen sat at the piano, her heart overflowing with emotions. Her hands naturally found the keys, and the first notes of Chopin's Nocturne filled the renovated environment. It was like coming home after a long journey. The news of the piano bar's transformation into a cultural center spread quickly throughout the city. The project, which initially seemed like just another commercial venture, had been transformed into something much greater, a space dedicated to uniting people through music and art. Michael observed from a distance as Helen conducted the first meeting with the teachers who would give classes at the center. Her eyes shone with renewed energy as she explained her vision for the space. "We want this to be a place of healing and transformation," she was saying, gesturing animatedly. "Music worked miracles in Mary's treatment, and I know it can help many other people." The mention of the music therapy program brought a smile to Michael's face. Dr. Bennett had presented the preliminary results at the last foundation meeting, and the numbers were impressive. Other medical centers were already showing interest in implementing similar programs. "Mr. Davidson?" Helen's voice brought him back to the present. The meeting had ended and she was approaching with a shy smile. "Can we talk for a moment?" He followed her to the piano where she sat, inviting him to sit beside her on the bench. "I know it was you," she said softly. "The foundation, the music therapy program, this place, it was all you." Michael felt his heart accelerate. "Helen, Please let me finish," she asked gently. "At first, when I discovered that you owned the company that would buy the piano bar, I was hurt. I thought it was all just an elaborate game. But then I saw how you changed, how you got closer to Amanda, how you've helped not just Mary, but so many other people through the foundation." She paused, her fingers playing distractedly with the piano keys. "You transformed our sadness into something beautiful, Michael. And you did it without seeking recognition, without expecting anything in return. You taught me that there are things more important than contracts and financial statements," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. "Seeing you play that first day at Ocean Crest, it was like waking up from a long sleep." Helen smiled, beginning to play softly. The melody was different from anything Michael had ever heard from her. "It's beautiful," he commented. "I don't recognize this music." "Because I just composed it," she replied, continuing to play. "It's about new beginnings, about finding hope when everything seems lost." Michael closed his eyes, letting himself be enveloped by the music. When he opened them again, he saw Amanda and Mary standing at the entrance to the room, observing them with identical smiles. "I think we found our first couple to perform at the center's inauguration," joked Amanda, approaching with Mary. "Honey," Helen blushed, abruptly stopping playing. "Why not?" Mary sat in a nearby chair. "You make a perfect pair, like those love stories where music brings people together." It was Michael's turn to blush. The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken possibilities. "Actually," Amanda intervened, breaking the moment, "we came to invite you for coffee. Mary and I have an idea for the benefit recital that we want to share." "And what idea would that be?" asked Helen, grateful for the change of subject. "We want to do a group presentation," explained Mary, her eyes shining with excitement. "All the patients in the music therapy program, along with their family members. A celebration of healing and unity through music. And," Amanda added with a mischievous smile, "we already have the perfect name for the presentation, New Horizons. A symphony of new beginnings." Michael and Helen exchanged a look. There was so much being said in that silence: gratitude, admiration, and something more, something that grew every day like the notes of a song yet to be written. "I think it's time for you two to admit what everyone already knows," said Mary with a wisdom beyond her years. "Sometimes the greatest act of courage is allowing yourself to be happy again." Helen turned to the piano, her fingers naturally finding the keys. The melody she began to play was the same one she had just composed, but now it seemed different, more complete. Michael observed her, amazed at how the music seemed to express everything their hearts still hesitated to say. The night of the inauguration of the New Horizons Cultural Center was rapidly approaching. The old piano bar had been transformed into a welcoming space that already attracted people from all over the city. The classrooms were always full, and the music therapy program had expanded to serve dozens of new patients. Helen spent her days between piano lessons, rehearsals for the benefit recital, and meetings with the medical team. Seeing the sparkle in her students' eyes, especially those who, like Mary, faced physical challenges, brought a joy she hadn't felt in years. On the morning of the big day, while organizing the sheet music for the evening's presentation, Helen received an unexpected visit. Beatrice, Michael's ex-wife, entered the music room carrying an old box. "Sorry to appear without warning," she said, placing the box on the piano. "But Amanda told me about the recital, and I thought this should be here." Helen carefully opened the box and was left speechless. Inside were dozens of old sheet music, some yellowed by time, others still preserved in their original covers. "These are Michael's mother's sheet music," explained Beatrice. "She was an incredible teacher. I kept everything after she passed, away waiting for the right moment to return them to the family." Helen leafed through the sheet, music with reverence. Some had handwritten notes, small tips and observations for the students. "You know," continued Beatrice, sitting in a nearby chair, "I've never seen Michael so alive as in the last few weeks. It's as if music had awakened, something in him that had been dormant for a long time." "He's a different man than I imagined at first," admitted Helen, feeling her cheeks blush slightly. Beatrice smiled. "Yes, he is. And you played an important role in that transformation." She paused, carefully choosing her words. "Amanda told me about you two, about how you met, about everything Michael has been doing through the foundation." Helen felt her heart race. "Beatrice, You don't need to explain anything," Beatrice gently interrupted her. "I just want you to know that I'm happy. For him, for Amanda, for all of you. Sometimes families form in the most unexpected ways." Before Helen could respond, animated voices filled the hallway. Mary and Amanda entered the room, carrying their own sets of sheet music. "Mom!" Mary exclaimed upon seeing Helen. "You need to see what Amanda and I prepared for tonight. It's a surprise for you and Uncle Michael." "Uncle Michael?" Helen raised, an eyebrow amused. "Well," Amanda laughed, "considering that he and you are obviously in love, we thought we'd better start practicing the new family titles." Helen blushed deeply, but before she could protest, Dr. Bennett appeared at the door of the room. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a smile, "but I need to steal Mary for a moment. Last checkup before the big presentation." As Mary left with the doctor, Amanda approached the piano and began to softly finger the keys. "You know what's funny?" she said, looking at Helen. "For years, I blamed my father for not being present, for not supporting me in music as my mother did. But now I realize that he was as lost as I was. Sometimes we need to completely lose ourselves to find our way back." Beatrice hugged her daughter by the shoulders, her eyes teary. "And sometimes we need a small miracle to show us the way." Helen looked at the old sheet music in her hands, thinking about all the coincidences and encounters that had led to that moment. The Ocean Crest restaurant, the piano bar, the physical therapy clinic. Each place, each moment, had been a step towards something greater than all of them. "Are you going to play any of these tonight?" Amanda asked, pointing to her grandmother's sheet music. Helen smiled, an idea forming in her mind. "Actually, I think I just had an inspiration for the end of the recital." She turned to Beatrice. "Could you help me with something?" The three women spent the following hour planning a surprise that promised to make the evening even more special. Outside the room, the sun was beginning to set over the city, painting the sky with the same golden tones that had illuminated the first encounter between Helen and Michael at Ocean Crest. The New Horizons Cultural Center was resplendent on inauguration. Night, the main hall was packed, with families, patients, doctors, and supporters of the music therapy program. On stage, the black grand piano gleamed under the spotlights, awaiting the night's artists. Michael nervously adjusted his tie when Amanda approached backstage. "Dad, she smiled, helping him with the knot. "Relax, everything will be fine." "I'm not nervous," he tried to disguise. "I just want everything to be perfect for Helen and Mary." "And for your big surprise too?" Amanda winked, complicit. Michael instinctively touched the pocket of his jacket, where a small velvet box rested. "How did you—" "Please, Dad," she laughed. "I've been helping you choose the perfect piano for her apartment for weeks. It wasn't hard to guess your plans." Before Michael could respond, the lights dimmed and the recital began. One by one, the patients from the music therapy program performed, showing their progress through music. Some played piano, others guitar. Some could only mark the rhythm with percussion instruments, but each presentation was a celebration of life and perseverance. Mary and Amanda presented their duet, bringing tears from the audience with their interpretation of Sonata au clair de Lune. Mary, who months earlier could barely coordinate her movements, now played with a grace that moved everyone. When it was Helen's turn, she surprised everyone by calling Michael to the stage. "Tonight," she said into the microphone, "I want to share something special. A song I began to compose on the day a curious businessman left a generous tip at Ocean Crest and changed our lives forever." The first notes filled the hall, and Michael recognized the melody that Helen had played for him in the renovated piano bar. But there was something different now. The music seemed more complete, richer in emotions. "This is our story," Helen continued playing. "A story about second chances, about finding love and hope in the most unexpected places." As the music flowed, images began to be projected on the wall behind the piano, photographs of the music therapy program, of patients in their sessions, of Mary and Amanda practicing together, of moments shared among all of them in the last few months. Michael couldn't contain the tears when the last photo appeared. It was his mother, young and smiling, sitting at the piano with him and Amanda as a baby. Helen's music gently transformed into one of his mother's favorite compositions, the one he used to play in his childhood lessons. Without words, he sat next to Helen on the piano bench. His hands found the keys, and together they completed the song, their melodies intertwining like their lives had intertwined in the last few months. When the last note echoed through the hall, Michael turned to Helen. "You taught me to hear the music again," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Not just the notes on the piano, but the music that exists in the small moments, in the laughter of our daughters, in the shared silence, in the strength to begin again." Then, to Helen's surprise and applause from the audience, he knelt, removing the small box from his pocket. "Helen," his voice trembled slightly, "you gave me back much more than the music. You gave me back the ability to love, to trust, to believe in miracles. Will you build a new melody with me?" Tears were freely running down Helen's face when she responded with an emotional "yes." Mary and Amanda ran to the stage, enveloping the two in a collective hug, while the audience gave a standing ovation. At the back of the hall, Beatrice smiled, her arm intertwined with Carl's, who discreetly wiped away a tear. Dr. Bennett applauded enthusiastically alongside her team, all witnesses to the transformative power of music and love. The New Horizons Cultural Center had become much more than a space for classes and presentations. It was a symbol of how music could unite people, heal wounds, and create new stories. As families and friends gathered to celebrate, the piano remained on stage, its keys still warm from Helen and Michael's touch, ready to accompany many other stories of love, overcoming, and new beginnings. End of story.